Well, this particular monk was what's called a renunciate. He lived in the forest. Nobody was around him. And he spent many years by himself in deep prayer and contemplation. One day, a little deer came along who was injured. And it aroused him out of his meditative state. And having great compassion, he went over to the deer and he tended to her needs. Little baby. He fell in love. Oh, the deer, so sweet. He took her in. He fed her. He took care of her. Now, prior to the deer being in his life, he thought of God. Once the deer entered his life, he thought of the deer. Years passed, and the deer stayed with him. And eventually, he grew old. He became an elder. His body naturally broke down, and his time to pass came. Another monk came to oversee his passing and said to him, remember, just think of God. Just think of God. And he said, oh, brother, I know. I've been in this meditative state for years now. This is good. I'm a master at this. I've got this. The monk reminded him, remember, the last thing that you think of will set you up for how you return. So if you think of God, when you depart this body, you will return in an even better place to continue your work. He said, I know this. So finally the moment came. And as the monk was passing, he was repeating the name Ram, 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 which is one of the names of God. Ram, 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 Ram. And his heart was feeling light and his mind was empty of thoughts, and he was ready. He had prepared himself for all these years. Just before he took his last breath, he opened his eyes one last time, looked at the other monk and said, but the deer. And when he was reborn, he was born as a deer. Yeah. So am I saying that you're going to be reborn as the last thing that you think of? Not necessarily. But the idea behind this story is that your last thought really does count. It really does count. And I'll give you just one more little example, a little bit of a fun one. So the other day I was driving in my car, and there wasn't that many cars on the road. Everybody was pretty much moving. And I was listening to a song on the radio, and, I thought I was paying attention. But then all of a sudden, the car in front of me slammed on their brakes. And before I knew it, in literally the blink of an eye, I was very, very close to them. I slammed on my brakes. And in that moment, what I thought was not God. It was, oh my God. A little bit of an explicative in there too. And I thought to myself, it was such an aha moment that I recognized how difficult it must be. We must really need to live a wholesome life, to really dedicate ourselves and to not train ourselves in the opposite direction in order to have those moments. Now, what happens? What happens when you're in a situation and your loved one is passing and, they haven't lived a life of virtue, or they haven't lived as focused on virtue as maybe they would have liked to, and as a result, they're suffering? Love them. Love them. Let them know that in these final moments, all is forgiven, that there is nothing to hold on to, that they're only going home to the place that they came here from. And when they arrived in this life, they didn't arrive with a story of how much they hated the previous place. No, they arrived excited, enthusiastic, ready to learn, to be. That's where they're going back to, the same place that prepared them to be here. So there's nothing to be afraid of. All is forgiven. All is forgiven. So allow yourself, to some degree, to follow your heart now, to prepare yourself for later, to love and to be loved, to live holy so that you can die peacefully. So let's close the eyes. Sit up nice and tall. Take a breath in and a breath out. And just remember, each breath in is a gift. Each breath out is an expression of gratitude. When we were born, we were given the greatest gift, the gift of life. And on our final exhalation, we're saying thank you for the journey. Beloved Source, Divine One, thank you. And gently opening the eyes. Thank you all so much for listening to this talk. I hope it was supportive. I hope and I pray that it provides some guidance and that your experience of both life and the experience of death are softened as a result of your life intention. Namaste.